What's it like living in Nampa, Idaho? I have got the most comprehensive video about what it is like to live in Nampa, Idaho. We're going to cover each different part of Nampa, what it's like to live there, what there is to do, what the schools are like there, and so much more. So let's get started. Nampa can be divided into 5 different areas: North Nampa, South Nampa, West Nampa, Downtown Nampa, and North End Nampa, each having their own pros and cons. Starting with North Nampa, it is going to be the part of Nampa that is north of Interstate 84. North Nampa is going to be the most expensive part of Nampa. If you take a home from any other part of Nampa and put it in North Nampa, it is going to consistently cost you more money. There are a few different reasons why North Nampa is more expensive than any of the other parts of Nampa, and we're going to talk about those pros later on in the video. The first thing you're going to notice when you get off the interstate in North Nampa is all of the businesses. For instance, right off the Garrity exit, there are 6 huge car lots lined out along the boulevard, along with a Walmart and a handful of fast food shops, and the same thing is going to be true off the Karcher exit. There are a plethora of restaurants, from Cracker Barrel to Wingers and Olive Garden to the Nampa Costco, Sportsman's Warehouse, Burlington, Marshall's, Kohl's, and I can't leave out Target either. Just a heads up, right here is where you're going to find the only Chick-fil-A in Nampa. Both of those interchanges are going to be the biggest ones for Nampa, but there are also 2 more in addition to that, and that is going to be the first pro about living in North Nampa, and that is phenomenal freeway access. There are 4 interchanges in Nampa to get on and off I-84, which makes it awesome for flow of traffic and ease of getting to where you need to go. And if you don't want to use I-84, then you can hop on Highway 2026, which connects Caldwell all the way to downtown Boise. And since we're on the topic of commuting, that is going to be the next pro for living in North Nampa. Now, you have pretty much anything you could need in North Nampa as far as dining, shopping, and entertainment, but maybe you want something a little bit more, maybe some finer dining or some bigger stores. You can head to the next town over to our east, which is going to be Meridian. North Nampa has great access to Meridian, whether you hop on one of the main roads like I-84 or 2026, or even just taking one of the many side roads that connects the 2 towns. So depending on where you are in North Nampa, you could be as little as a 2-minute to even a 20-minute drive to Meridian, just depending on where you are in North Nampa, as the towns have pretty much kind of grown together and you don't even notice that you're changing from one town to the next because they're kind of just touching each other now. One big thing that will change North Nampa is a brand new interstate access connecting I-84 to Highway 16, and this is going to create a ton of access, even more than North Nampa already has. One of the first things my clients ask me when they come into Nampa is, "Hey Isaac, it's not all warehouses and industrial buildings, right?" And this is going to be our first con to some people, but it's going to be a huge pro to others. Yes, we have a pretty good amount of warehouses and factories to an extent, but there is an illusion that that is all that Nampa is because they are placed within the first block or 2 of the interstate. So as you're driving through, that's pretty much all you're going to be seeing. Having all these factories, industrial buildings right next to the freeway is actually great for a few reasons. One of the main ones being that that's where all the trucking is going to be confined to, with all the big semis and stuff like that. They're not going to be driving through residential areas to get to warehouses on the outside of town in between you and the interstate. And the second great thing about them is they are phenomenal noise blocks for all of the noise from cars and trucks driving on I-84. It doesn't penetrate through to all the residential areas because there's a lot of concrete buildings that sound has to go through, so it keeps it nice and peaceful. And the final great thing about them is they offer jobs for thousands of people in Nampa, like the brand new Amazon distribution center or the older facilities that have been in the area for decades, like the Lactalis cheese factory or the amalgamated sugar factory, which leads us to the next thing about Nampa. If you've done some research about Nampa, you've probably heard somewhere that Nampa has a smell. Some people love it, some people hate it, and that's going to be attributed to the sugar beet factory, as the locals call it. This is a funny thing because I get asked about it all the time, and I'm not sure why it's gotten such a bad reputation. It doesn't smell that bad at all. A lot of people say that it smells a lot like peanuts, and I would have to agree with that. But I guess it's kind of like living next to a cow farm. Some people say it smells like crap, other people say it smells like money.
Hello! I like money.
Let's cover a little bit about the housing in North Nampa. You're going to see patterns all throughout Nampa in regards to the types of homes being built. North Nampa is going to be much the newer part of Nampa, so the majority of the homes that you're going to see were built during a few building spikes. A lot during the 90s and early 2000s, and then a bunch from the most recent boom here in the last 5 to 8 years. Sprinkled amongst these developments are older farms which covered the area at one time but are pretty quickly disappearing. The main builders that are dominating the North Nampa area are Hubble Homes, Corey Barton Homes, Toll Brothers, as well as Hayden Homes. There are also a couple of nationally known builders that are just getting into the Boise area this year, and that's Richmond American Homes and Lennar Homes, or Lennar Homes, however you say it. North Nampa is part of two different school districts, Valley View School District having the larger portion, and Nampa School District having a smaller part. So for the most part, if you're living here, your kids will likely attend Ridgeview High School, which is one of the newest schools in the area. As for hospitals in North Nampa, you're going to find St. Luke's over off of the Karcher interchange, and there is a St. Al's just south of the Garrity interchange, even though it's not technically in North Nampa. As for activities and things to do in North Nampa, there's 3 parks, Ora Brandt Park, Sunset Oaks Park, and Optimus Park, as well as 2 large golf courses, Centennial and Ridgecrest. But the biggest attraction of them all is the Ford Idaho Center, which is one of the biggest venues in the entire state. They have all sorts of events all year long, from concerts and live music to high school sporting events to motocross and monster truck events. But the biggest of all is the Snake River Stampede, which is the biggest rodeo in the state, and it is even an NFR rodeo. Moving on to South Nampa, one of the biggest appeals of living in South Nampa is it embraces a much slower pace of life, which is a pro for some and a con for others. I personally love South Nampa as I grew up in that area, and it is a great place to raise a family as it has kind of the end of the cul-de-sac vibes. And what I mean by this is that there aren't a lot of places in South Nampa or south of South Nampa that would draw a ton of traffic. The vast majority of traffic in South Nampa is just going to be people who live there or driving to and from work, or are going to be driving to pick their kids up from school and practice and then back home, which brings us to the first con that I especially felt growing up in South Nampa, and that is there aren't a ton of businesses in South Nampa. Your biggest stores are going to be a Walmart and an Albertsons, but nothing like Costco, Target, or Kohl's for clothing. There are not many restaurants in South Nampa either, which can be kind of a bummer. Sometimes you're in a last minute mood and don't want McDonald's or some other fast food place. Maybe you want to go and sit down and have a nice meal like Applebee's or Texas Roadhouse or something along those lines. Well, you're just going to have to travel to get to those. Hopping back to schools, South Nampa falls under the Nampa School District, and the area is split between 2 high schools, Skyview High School and Columbia High School. Even though the Nampa High School boundary isn't specifically in South Nampa, I'm going to throw it in there because what these 3 schools do is pretty neat. Each of these 3 schools teach your basic high school curriculum, English, math, science, all that jazz. But in addition to that, the schools have their own specialties. For instance, Columbia High School has all of the FFA, 4-H, and agricultural programs, and the other 2 schools don't. Skyview has a great construction program, but neither of the other 2 high schools have that. And Nampa High has all of the automotive tech programs that none of the other schools have. So what these 3 schools do, say if a student is going to Nampa High School but wants to participate in the ag programs at Columbia, they can bus over to Columbia and utilize those, and vice versa. If a student's going to Columbia and wants to participate in the automotive or construction programs, then they can bus to those other 2 schools. And it's really neat to see that because I haven't heard of that in many other places. So the 3 schools cooperating for the good of the community really is a neat thing to see. As for activities in South Nampa, you might be getting a little concerned that there's not a whole lot to do, and it's just not true. There are a handful of parks throughout the area, as well as a huge rec center with rock climbing, swimming, gym, you name it, it's got it all. There is also an awesome greenbelt that is close to 13 miles long, snaking through town and going through the Wilson Springs Ponds, which are man-made ponds open to the public that the Department of Fish and Game stocks just about every week throughout the summer with rainbow trout to catch. You're going to find similar types of homes in South Nampa as you are going to find in North Nampa, like Toll Brothers, Hayden Homes, Hubble Homes, CBH, Lennar, and Richmond with other custom builders. The biggest difference is going to be the amount of acreage properties that you'll find here. You can find anything from half-acre to multi-acre horse properties. The further out from town that you get, the more of them you're going to see. There's one hospital in South Nampa, and that's going to be St. Al's, and there is a primary health in South Nampa as well. The biggest con to South Nampa is simply going to be the distance to everything. Since it is so much further away from the interstate, it's not like North Nampa where you can just hop on the interstate and go either way you need to go. South Nampa, in some parts, you can be as many as 15 to 20 minutes away from the interstate. So you add that onto your commute, that's definitely something to take into account for, and one of the biggest complaints that I've heard. Moving on to West Nampa, it's going to be really similar to North Nampa as well as South Nampa, except for one big thing, Lake Lowell. Lake Lowell is an 8,000 826-acre reservoir that is the only one in the valley. It provides tons of opportunities for people from fishing, boating, water skiing, and other water sports to hiking, mountain biking, and dog walking, along with hunting in parts of the lake as well. This has become huge in the most recent building boom as builders are taking advantage of sites in close proximity to the lake to build beautiful custom homes around golf courses. As for high schools, the majority of West Nampa is going to be in the Nampa High School boundary, but there's a small section that's in the Skyview High School boundary, as well as in the Valley View School District. And one thing that I want to add on to this, just because you're in a certain school district or high school boundary, that doesn't mean that your kid necessarily has to go to that school. You can still open enroll in other schools that you might want your kid to go to. However, it's not guaranteed that you're going to get into those schools, but it's still a possibility. The shopping and amenities is really what makes West Nampa shine. You've got all the shopping and dining choices that you could possibly want. Everything from the Edwards Movie Theater, Outback Steakhouse and Texas Roadhouse, to Home Depot and Lowe's, Red Robin and the Karcher Mall, which has been going through a series of rebranding, but its most recent addition has been a boot barn. There are also so many more things around this Karcher Road, Nampa Caldwell Boulevard location, and this is going to be one of the biggest cons for the area actually. For interstate access, West Nampa really only has the Karcher interchange, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but the next town to the north of here is Caldwell, and they are lacking in interstate access too. So you have the entire south half of Caldwell trying to use the Karcher interchange, as well as everybody living in West Nampa. Plus, with all of the conveniences that are in that area and shopping, you get that draw from people coming to the area as well. So you have three main factors that are pulling people through that one interchange, which causes some serious congestion during rush hour. One of the really nice things about the West Nampa area is it is super close to the Sunny Slope area, which has tons of fruit orchards and vineyards that do wine tasting and all sorts of cool events. And if you're there, you definitely got to take a hike up to the top of Lizard Butte to catch a sunset over the Snake River. I highly recommend it. Downtown Nampa is going to be the oldest part of Nampa, with the majority of the buildings there being built in the early 1900s. It's centered around the original train depot on Front Street, and this is where you're going to find most of the commerce for the area. There are a ton of older brick buildings that make up First Street, where new businesses have given them life, like Holy Cow, which is a great burger joint, Messenger Pizza for the biggest pizza you've ever seen, Pre-Funk for a cold drink, Mesa Tacos for a little southern-inspired food. Even an escape room calls the downtown area home. In the Lloyd Lumber Square, which used to be an old sawmill, there are farmers markets every single Saturday during the spring, summer, and fall months with tons of local vendors. The Nampa Public Library as well as the Nampa Post Office are going to be located in the downtown area as well. The amount of housing in the downtown Nampa area is going to be pretty limited to style, and what you're going to find is lots of cozy cottages built in the early 1900s. The downtown Nampa area is home to the Northwest Nazarene University. NNU for short is a private Christian liberal arts university with a large range of undergraduate and graduate programs, modern facilities, and a diverse student body from all of the 50 states and over 20 countries. NNU is a top-ranked Christian university in the United States. The nice thing about the area is that there are a lot of older, affordable homes that are perfect for college students that are attending the university. Finishing up with the north end of Nampa, there isn't a ton of diversity that we're going to get to cover in here, and it is mainly made up of a lot of industrial areas and mechanic shops. It's north of the train tracks, but south of the freeway. As for housing in there, you might be able to find some houses scattered in between the shops, but they are going to be older homes that are going to need quite a bit of repair. And the closer you're going to get to the downtown Nampa side of the north end, you'll find a larger amount of older homes, as well as the huge Lakeview Park, which is probably going to be one of the biggest parks in Nampa. There are a ton of events that go on there throughout the summer, from markets to art shows to car shows. I hope this video has given you some insights into what it is like living in Nampa, Idaho. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up right there, and be sure to stay tuned for my future videos.